Hi everyone and welcome back to the After Aston I podcast. Today we're delighted to be joined by Grace Smith.
Grace did a combined honours degree in public policy and social studies while she was at Aston. Since then she's been working in various roles within the media industry. As well as being a BBC radio presenter and a charismatic host of Weekend Breakfast, she's also a voiceover artist, live events host, podcaster and reporter, a role which she thoroughly enjoyed during the Commonwealth Games and at various music festivals. Grace isn't just a voice on the radio, she's a storyteller, educator and music aficionado, weaving a rich tapestry of experiences in the media landscape. Grace, welcome. It is wonderful to have you on the podcast.
Hello, it is really good to be here. I feel quite in awe. Thank you.
Grace, so welcome to the podcast. Could you give us a bit of an overview of your career so far then? Like you graduated from Aston and then what happened next?
Yeah, it's quite checkered. So yeah, sure. I graduated in 1999. I did actually do a gap year, but not in the gap. So I worked for Universities and Colleges Christian Fellowship for a year, volunteering. So I did it a bit backwards. That was over at Birmingham University, actually. Boo hiss. But we all skate over that. Then after that, I fell into the graduate trap of temping for a bit because I didn't go straight into a milk round type job, which seemed to be a goal at the time. And I wasn't entirely clear on what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to use my public policy, the thing about working for public companies and just giving back, let's put it that way. But I did temping for 18 months and then I was accepted on the Inland Revenue Graduate Scheme, now HMRC. Our friends, they are friends to me always. So yeah, I was on that graduate scheme for 5 years, training to be a tax inspector. So I was a corporate tax inspector by the time I left that. But then I had a bit of an early midlife crisis, to say at 30, and thinking, is this really what I want to do with the rest of my life? As good as it is, and all those kind of things. And then I take a complete quantum leap into education, working there. I worked initially for Connections. I still do work in education now, full-time too. I work now as a pastoral manager for a collegiate of secondary schools, helping children. Actually, I am helping children as well, but I'm working with senior leaders in how to prevent permanent exclusions and provide good outcomes for young people. So that's it. The media thing has been thrown in over the last 4 years, really, and which is amazing. And I absolutely love it. But yeah, so lots of different things.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done quite a few things there. Would you say that you enjoy one part more than the other, or which one do you favour more?
Oh, I love the media. That's childhood dream stuff, which I think once you get into a track of, especially graduate employment, proper job, if you like, you feel that's what I need to do. So even with taking the leap into media, and I can talk more about how I got into that, but I've got bills to pay. I've got a mortgage. I can't be a runner. You know, you hear people are going into media like in their late teens, early 20s, when it's like, nothing matters. I can move to London and live with 17 people, sleep in a bathtub, and while I go and aim for that never felt like it was an option for me. It wasn't an option for me. I missed that. And I've got a good job. I've got a very good career path. I'm enjoying that. But I still remembered 8-year-old me making tapes off the radio for my own shows. That's always been a dream. I've always loved to talk. So I feel incredibly fortunate how things have worked out, and I'm glad I've been able to follow my dreams really into doing a media job, and more opportunities coming from that. It's just, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Was there one kind of formative radio show in particular? I think everyone's always got one or two. Do you have that kind of one particular show that you remember, or that one particular time of the week when the radio would always be on and that's what you started thinking about?
Oh, as a listener? Oh gosh, yeah, loads. I used to listen to the top 40 growing up, as everyone did. Any music specialist shows? Like I say, I fancy myself as an aficionado with music. That's probably not true. In my mind, there were all the things. Zane Lowe on Radio 1 back in the day, phenomenal. Jo Wiley, I just always thought she was really cool. And the fact that I've been able to go to music festivals for the BBC and report from there, that's my inner Jo Wiley. This is so exciting. Focus, interview the guests. Yeah, like Clara Amfo, what she's doing now is great. But those sort of things. I grew up, my mum used to listen to things like Smooth, all those kind of middle of the road artists, but that was always in the background. But my house growing up was always filled with music. My parents are Jamaican, and all sorts of genres, like I said, so from smooth FM to Dennis Brown, reggae artists, all that kind of stuff. And I loved it all. There's really hardly any music I don't like. So any music show that celebrates that, even like the mighty Ken Bruce, who's just left Radio 2 after 45 years, which is just wow. I love him, and I've loved him from when I was at Aston 20s, and my friends are like, "Are you okay? How old are you?" Don't worry about that. I'm cool. I'm going to make Terry Wogan and Ken Bruce cool. So I love it all, really. Yeah.
Did you ever try and get on Popmaster?
I've done it. Actually, I don't know why that's not in my bio. That should be the highlight. Sorry. My goodness. Yeah, 2013, October 2013. I did it.
Oh, how did you do?
27. I'm quite happy with that. If there's top score 39, which is gold status. And the person that I was against did get 39. So I didn't actually win, but I got a 1 year out t-shirt, which I'm a winner. And Ken Bruce said I did really well. So that to me was the only stamp of approval that I need. It's good.
That's top of the CV material, right?
I know. There. I don't believe it's not on there. I'm going to make some alterations immediately after this.
Being a radio presenter, I'm quite sure everyone outside of that actual world has this kind of mental image that people roll out of bed, go into the studio, put on the cans, and that they just start talking. There must be so much more to it than that. What really goes into producing a radio show?
You can do that, but I don't advise it. I've done it once or twice. But first of all, just producers, if you're fortunate enough to have producers on your show, they are god tier people in the preparation they do. As a producer presenter, so kind of I have been as well. Is prepping what you need in your show. It depends. In fact, I've only really done radio for the BBC, which, wow, that's not how most people get into starting in radio. So I feel like I got jumped straight in with both feet, which has its pros and cons. But one of the pros being formatting, producers who source shows, they take your input. In fact, the first ever show I did for the BBC, I did create, and I didn't know what production actually meant. I never knew what they did until I've actually gone into this field myself. And it's like, oh my gosh, you do everything. Like, I've had people say to me, great show, like, how do you do all of that? And I said, producers do a lot. I put the microphone up and then I start speaking. Oh, you don't do much. It's, oh, thanks a lot. No, producers are amazing, but prepping the content for the show, how you want your show to be, all of that. I'm always in at least an hour before I go on air, just prepping minor things. If there's anything breaking, if there's anything that needs to be altered to the show, most of it is planned already. Then there are the little technical things that you're getting used to, things for the sense of day. I do a lot of current affairs on the show, the Sunday breakfast show that I was really heavily involved in, still am. Those sort of things, yeah, you need to have those up to the minute so you go in. But yeah, it's just relaxing, making sure that you're lubricated. Yeah.
Is it true that I've got a friend who's an actor and he once told me that if you're doing radio work, you shouldn't eat chocolate?
I didn't know if that's true, but that makes sense to me. That does make sense to me. My drink of choice is like something warm water is what I have. It's not as exciting. I'd avoid coffee only because it's not very nice at the Beeb. Unless you're bringing your own. But yeah, I don't tend to eat for a breakfast show. I don't tend to eat anything. I'm usually eating something. I'd avoid boiled eggs as well because I tend to have those in the middle of the show and I think I regret that. Wait till the show's after. Shouldn't have done that.
So alongside your podcasting and being a radio presenter, you've hosted some book launches as well over the last year for well-known people as well. So novelist Katie Bishop, columnist and broadcaster Grace Dent, and historian and broadcaster Dan Jones, among a few other people as well. What do you think is the key to being a good interviewer?
I want to answer another question actually around that. But I think the key to being a great interviewer, whether it's a celebrity, an author, a man off the street, is being interested. I think that's it. Being interested and just open. So, for example, with all three of those authors you've just mentioned. So Katie Bishop, that was her first time novel, Girls of Summer, which is phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. But that's a book that I would normally pull off the shelf for myself anyway. Like, I love that. And it gave all that and more. Dan Jones is a historian. I didn't even do GCSE history. Do you know what I mean? And so delving into his works, what world is this? It's literally a millennia ago, like what he was talking about, like the 100 Years' War. but being open to that. And it's, oh, that's interesting. Having a great chat with Dan before we did the interview. And this is a completely new world that you've opened up, like medieval Britain or pre-medieval Britain. Like I said, didn't do GCSE history. But it's just, wow. And like, I get so much from it as well. And then Grace Dent, I love it. She's a media hero of mine, and I was gagging when they got in touch with me to interview her. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the least cool I've ever been in responding to an email, because I just went, ah! And then like, oh yes, I think that'll be acceptable, I can do that, but just being interested in her life and in what she has to say. And I think the key for interviewing is just, it's not about you. As long as you park yourself, park your ego. People are listening or watching, not for you, they're doing it for the guest you're interviewing. And you want them to show themselves in their best light. You want them to be able to give off the best. And everyone wins then, because the listeners or the audience win. Obviously, the guest wins. I win. It's just, I know about me. I don't need to ask about me. And I just get to meet either interesting people, or I get to meet my heroes, which is phenomenal, and hear what they have to say. So yeah, but being interested and not being ego driven, I think, is important.
Who's your favourite person that you've interviewed?
Oh, picking my favourite children. I don't know. Is there a favourite? Grace Dent is the one that I got the most stupidly giddy about before, and then it was just such a relief to meet her, because she was actually late for the event. She wasn't late, but just traffic. It was a train strike day, so she couldn't help it. I had to be not talked off the ledge. I wasn't going to do anything stupid, but I had to be calmed by like close friends and stuff. They're like, what are you talking about? You do this all the time. But I'm like, I know, yes, I can't breathe. I was really like that. And then as soon as I met her, and she was running late, and she looked phenomenal when she turned up as well. And I'd calmed down a bit by then as well, because my sister advised me. She goes, you love her anyway. You talk all the time. Just forget about the audience or forget about the event. You're getting to talk to somebody that you admire. That calmed me down instantly. That was great. But she was so brilliant, because she ran in, and then we had to go straight backstage. And as we were in the wings being introduced and we were chatting, and she just went, oh my God, I don't know why I do this to myself. And I said exactly the same thing. and then we just hugged it out. We literally hugged it out, and then went on stage and did the interview. And it was amazing. She was just such a real, normal person. I thought, yeah, this is great.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely.
See, because I love Grace Dent. I've seen her in so many things, or read the books, listened to the podcasts. But whilst admiring, I find the thought of her quite scary, because she always gives the impression that she's someone that if she turned against you, it would not go well.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you got on like a house on fire. Yeah. Have you had any guests, not necessarily where it did go that way, but where you were worried that they're too big a name, or they're too high in their field, and that they're not going to respond to me? They're going to treat this poorly. Have you ever had anyone were you worried about, and then obviously it turned out well?
I haven't really. And I think because it's part of the grounding myself, regulating and managing my emotions. I always think of, they're just people. They are just people. And I'm not trying to Jeremy Paxman anybody. There's no need for anyone to turn. And across the board, even when I was doing podcasting with my friends, so the podcast we started, which started this whole journey, by the way, into media, it's called Life Begins. I did it with a fellow Aston graduate, Michelle Chahak. We're still best friends till now, since from 1995 till now. Very excited. But we started it, and we were just speaking to regular people, like friends and families, and it's ordinary people have something extraordinary about them if you just take the time to listen and ask. And I apply that still to celebrities. You're just a person. You didn't come out of the womb famous, unless you're royal, then you did. But you didn't come out that way. You are just a person. You have Grace Dent saying that, why am I doing this to myself? She's on TV all the time. It was just a lovely reminder. Just flesh and bones. There's nothing to be scared of. If I get to that giddy height where I'm the same level as Grace Dent, I don't want anyone to ever think, oh my gosh, Grace, I can't speak to Grace Smith. No, I'm just like, I get nervous before every interview, whether I'm interviewing or being interviewed. Like I was a bit fluttery even before today. And like, why? You're wonderful people. It's fine. So, yeah.
I suppose if you were cooking something for Grace Dent, it might be a bit
that's
different.
completely.
Yeah. Maybe
That
that's what I'm
said,
thinking of.
yeah, that said, for the interview, I did actually bring her a Belgian bun because it was her birthday the day before. And it was before the book Comfort Eating. So I thought I'd bring her a
Oh.
little gift. And it went down well. And seeing how happy she was from an Aldi Belgian bun, I'm not worried about cooking for her. She'll be pleased.
Oh, bless. It sounds like you've had quite a few highs as well in your creative media journey. But
Yeah.
one thing that we do ask a lot of our guests is challenges that you faced in the sector. And could you tell us a little bit about that, and do the pros outweigh the challenges?
Yeah. Media is equal parts terrifying and exciting and exhilarating. I think it's terrifying on a couple of levels. So basically, for just security, I've worked in a few industries, like you've seen from my intro. I've never been in a sector that is as insecure as media. Like being a presenter in particular, being a producer, you're probably protecting yourself a little bit more because you can do lots of different things. But they can end it at any time and for a variety of reasons. It's not even necessarily personal, like it's about you. There's huge changes that have happened in BBC local radio
Yeah.
where a good, don't want to exaggerate, don't quote these stats, but a good half of regular presenters are no longer in their roles. Nothing to do with them or their performance. It's just to do with changes. If you
Yeah.
can live with that level of insecurity, then you're fine. But it's there all the time. If you're worried about ratings, if you're like, especially if you're presenting, but producers as well, they put a lot into the show. But being a face of a show, you're victim to that all the time. So that's quite daunting. And then, so aside from just financial security, it's obviously on some level performative. Like I like to think that I'm being real all the time. But there are some days where you're not feeling it, but then you've got to put that mic fader up and beyond. You're not going to tell the 40,000 listeners or however many listeners you've got that, oh, I'm having a rubbish day. Do you mind? I'm just going to put Michael Bublé on a loop for an hour. You're not going to do that. And so having to do that's quite taxing as well. But on the flip side, it's amazing. There's not quite a buzz like live radio and being out there. That's fantastic. Like I said, I'm living my childhood dream in doing it. And I still can't really believe I'm doing it. I have to fight imposter syndrome. That's another thing that's negative, but okay.
Would you say that's one thing that drives you as well, because it's always been something that you want to aspire to be? And
yeah, absolutely, for sure. And yeah, that drives me, that inner dream of doing it. And I love connecting with people. I genuinely, people say, I love people, but I do. And it's a nice way to connect to people. Like with the listeners, it's lovely. Like even I had some Christmas cards this year and it's just so nice. Like people like, I love the company. I really enjoy that company. Thank you for being a friendly voice, or thank you for a tough time. I think back to when I started the breakfast show, it was just in the height of lockdown 3 during the pandemic. And I remember watching the news. I think it was only my second or third show, and watching the news and Boris saying, yeah, Christmas is cancelled. Oh my gosh. And then I literally finished watching the news feeling thoroughly depressed. And then I've got to speak to the whole West Midlands in the morning who are probably feeling like I am as well. And then I got into work about 4:30 that morning. We go on air at 6. And me and my producer met in the green room. Actually, we weren't even in the studio yet. And he was like, beep. And I was like, beep. And it was like, what are we going to do? And it's okay, we've had it out. Let's have a great show. And it was so powerful to go in and knowing that you were like company or a source of security in news at a time that was so insecure and so depressing. And I came away from that, and on a really personal level, it helped me. But then I just thought, what a privilege to be able to do that. That's phenomenal. And there's not many jobs you can get that does that. To inform and to entertain and to just be company at an unstable time to like tens of thousands of people at a time is, that's mint.
On that morning, that lockdown morning, is that the closest you've come to popping Michael Bublé on a loop for an hour?
That wouldn't have helped me. No. No, strangely not. I don't know if it's that kind of that bit of grit, like in the face of something miserable. It's like you just dig your heels in and that strangely wasn't. I think it's a bit of collective grief as well. I think it's when it's personal, because it's funny, like with that breakfast show, it's actually been a sort of background soundtrack to a lot of grief. Like before my first show, my father passed away. And then towards the end, because I don't regularly do that show now, I'm doing it this Sunday coming actually. I do it regularly, I'm still involved. But then my mum passed away. And it's those are days when you're like, oh man, can I do this? But then I've got a lot of energy from doing it as well. And that's really helped. And listeners have been beautiful and they helped me too. So yeah. And the relationship with your producer, that's where it comes in as well. Because my producers have been wonderful. They literally can hold your hand. They can literally just bring you a hot drink and give you a hug and then run into the ops room. And but no, it's been great. It's been really supportive in that regard. So
if we have any recent graduates listening who are interested in a creative career, where they get opportunities to do many different things, how do they start? What are your top tips? Where do they start? Or what do they need to think about within themselves if they're going to launch down that path?
I think about what you're passionate about and follow that at whatever stage you're at. Like I said, this media career started for me for doing a podcast with my friend Michelle, and neither of us had any clue what we were doing technically. We literally watched LinkedIn videos and did courses in the most painstaking ways of like, how do you create a podcast? How do you upload a podcast? How do you do that? And we did that week after week. She lives in London now and we'd be meeting up like every week. I'm still in Birmingham. And we followed that, and I'm still probably the proudest almost that we did that from doing nothing because we were passionate about it. We want to create this podcast and we did it for the love of it. We weren't expecting to get paid or we weren't expecting a career to come out of it. This is more of a surprise to me than anybody, but we did it for the love of it. Like we wanted to do it. And that's what sparked it. Somebody listened to that podcast. A lot of people said to me, you've got a great voice for broadcasting. Have you thought about broadcasting? As yeah, like my whole life, but I don't know how to get into it. And then essentially a competition came up for the BBC for new voices. I went for an open audition, having never done that before. And out of 200 people, they're like, we like you. We want you to do a Christmas show. That was my first live. That was a pre-recorded radio show. So my stomach's been like in a ball of knots for pretty much 3 years because I feel like I've done everything from a position of not knowing anything, but I've obviously been picking things up and opportunities keep coming. So it's just be prepared, do what you can, do what you love, knock on doors. Some will open, a lot won't. So be prepared for that, but some will open. Just keep the tenacity of doing what you love, doing that. But if you want the BBC, for example, there's apprenticeships galore at the moment. And it's not just the BBC, lots of media companies, Channel 4, ITV. Be aware of what they are, get connected, get on LinkedIn. I'm saying that like I'm a late adopter to LinkedIn, but get on there. But there are opportunities, but just be ready. Just be ready in doing the things that you do. It's valuable, whatever you're doing.
It's nearly time to let you go, but we always ask our guests the final same 3 quick fire questions. I'll kick you off. What's the most valuable lesson you've learned throughout your career so far?
Believe in yourself. That's really important. Yeah, imposter syndrome can kick in like mad. As somebody once informed me, the BBC is not a charity. You wouldn't be here if they didn't believe in you, if they didn't think you had the talent to be here. And that is something I'm still learning. But yeah, absolutely believe in yourself.
And the next one is, I know you've done so much already, but what's next for you, Grace?
God knows.
Yeah,
literally, God alone knows. So I'll keep on trucking, like just following what I'm passionate about, following my own advice really, in just looking for the opportunities. Everything that's come to me have just been opportunities that seem to have come by magic, but they're not by magic. There is being in the right place at the right time, but just keep on trucking in what you're doing. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Yeah. And finally, if our listeners wanted to connect with you, how do they find you?
I've said LinkedIn about 4 times. But I am on LinkedIn as Grace Smith. Like I said, I'm quite a late adopter, so bear with. Instagram's a good way to get in touch with me. I'm at Grace Smith, not Jones. So I'm on there as that. I still have a BBC address, so grace.smith@bbc.co.uk. That's great.
That's lovely, Grace. It's been so lovely chatting to you today. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you both. It's been brilliant.